when I finally got still and I finally realized that I can live a life ever forward. I can still be moving forward in life. I can have potential and I can climb the ladder and I can reach new levels in wellness and in health and in relationships and in business and all these things without always having to just go, 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 without having to always just be like, you know what, no matter what, burn the boats. We can just push through, we can endure, we can whatever. There's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. But I realized that ever forward lives inside of having the most stillness that I can possibly create. Because within taking that moment and being as still and being as quiet as possible so that I can really lean in and listen to what my heart is trying to tell me, like infinity lives inside of this one moment. Anything and everything that I want, any potential that I think that I have, or anything that I want to create lives inside of me making a moment to think about it, to wonder what my life could look like, to wonder what I want to create, to really process how I'm feeling. Am I even fully aware of how I'm feeling? Taking just these small, tiny moments compounded on top of each other, like forever lives inside of these moments, because within those moments, we are creating our future.
Welcome my guest, Chase Chewning. He's an Army veteran, podcast host of the wildly popular show Everforward Radio, and an ACE certified health coach. Also, he holds a BS in exercise science and an MS in health promotion. Chase interviews industry leaders in fitness, nutrition, and mindset, messages to help you live a life ever forward. After 6 years of active duty, Chase was medically discharged from the military due to a string of injuries that ultimately required him to have bilateral reconstructive hip surgeries. After learning how to walk again twice, exercise as medicine and healthy lifestyle modifications became his passion. All right, I want to welcome to the show, Chase Chewning. I am so honored to have you on the show. I was so thankful to come on your show, Everforward Radio. What an honor. I truly love your studio, and just being in your presence, I have to say, was so welcoming, and you really created such a welcoming environment. And that's obviously why I know you're so successful in what you do, because I believe you really care about the relationships you're building and the quality you're providing to others. So thank you for that. Thank you for welcoming me on your podcast. And I'm just so happy to
Oh,
have
my
you here.
pleasure. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you.
Yeah.
I'm always just trying to make myself and everybody as comfortable as possible, because conversations, that we have these days on platforms such as this are so important, and want to make sure that we get the set and setting dialed in for everybody.
Exactly. Well, so we're going to go into obviously your whole messaging behind your podcast and your brand, Everforward. But first, I want to get people familiar with who you are behind the brand and really what led you into the work you do today and what drives that impact you're really trying to serve in the world today.
Yeah, great question. And anytime that I'm asked, who you are, what you do, I feel like there are certain obvious things that I can just share in my story, but it's almost like every time I'm asked it, I'm a different person on that day. Um, and where I'm at today is just really in a place of expansion. I've really been tapping into exploring new territories within myself over the last couple of years. And so, I say that now because it was easier for me in the past to just say, I'm a podcaster, I'm a health coach, I'm a creative, I'm, all these things that on paper, I guess that I do. But really, since the kind of the middle of the pandemic, 2020, I feel like I've just been kind of rediscovering myself in ways, and really stepping out into unexplored territories and just what I'm capable of, what I want to do, how I want to do it, um, the work that I want to do in the world, my personal life, all the above. So that's just kind of like where a very open, ambiguous, maybe even definition, explanation of where I am today. But I've worn a lot of hats over the years. I've been a certified health coach since about 2015. I used to run the wellness department in a concierge medical practice back on the East Coast. And that was really my professional and personal identity for many years, of getting people well, helping them stay well, prevent medication, lose weight, lifestyle, behavior change, working side by side with their primary care provider, and working with a team of other coaches doing the same thing. I managed about 7 to 9 offices and 7 to 9 other health coaches. And that's what I did for several years. And then before that, I was active duty Army from 2003 to 2009. And so, and then before that, I grew up in the middle of nowhere, back in Southwest Virginia, and just never knew what it was to not be still. And so living an active life and playing sports and playing, and then, having one of the most physically demanding and active jobs in the world, I think, being active duty military, and then working professionally. So I've just always been inundated physically, mentally, emotionally in movement, in wellness, and health, in play, what it is to feel good, look good, eat good, in all areas, whether that was active or passive, whether it was for me and my family, or what I did, how I helped others kind of do the same. And then somewhere along the way, the internet popped up and social media became a thing, and you could kind of just share your journey and share that story, and then help others on these platforms and through these mediums. And my journey with what we're doing here today kind of began back in about 2013, dipping a toe in the
Wow.
pool of YouTube and Instagram, and podcasting a couple years later. And that's kind of like the all-encompassing journey and definition of who I am, where I come from, what I've done, what I do. And now I'm just on a journey, like I said, to continue to explore these new areas of myself, and then bring everybody along the way through the power of podcasting, through the power of social media, and just letting people know what's working for me, what I find value in, what I'm struggling with, in all aspects of wellness, I'll say.
Amazing. Well, so you mentioned obviously that you served in the military. So, and you were speaking about being so active in everything you did. So, I'm curious, how did you like move from being so active and go, go, go in things to then just being and actually being able to do this inner work, this inner reflection, address your health? Because I know you came from actually what drove you to leave the military was a health problem or a health issue, if you want to say. If you could kind of touch on that,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people don't realize when they're just doing, 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 and they don't even know how to just be and like really go inward
Mhm.
and start to address possibly what's not serving them in their life.
What a what a important question, Erica. And you don't realize, it's one of those things you don't realize, that you're a human doing and not a human being, until you're on the other side of it. Um, I was doing. I was doing my entire life. I was doing because, well, a lot of different reasons, and I'm willing to bet probably a few of your listeners could relate. Being the oldest of three, I'm the oldest brother, the oldest sibling. Um, Feeling that need to kind of shepherd and to take care of, but also to have a little fun with, as older brothers do, their siblings, but to just kind of keep shepherd over my family, my brother and my sister. And especially when my parents divorced at a very young age, I was about 4 or 5 years old, that even added another layer, whether it was real or not. It was kind of this belief system that I took on, that now I'm the in between. I'm the oldest, I'm the one that can understand the most. I can, keep my brother and sister safe. I can communicate between the different families now. And then I went through middle school and high school in a private Christian school. And so then I kind of had this other kind of belief system and infrastructure added to my life of religion and discipline and all the kind of parameters that come with that. And then I left and went straight into the military. And so I spent 6 years, like I said, just doing what I was told, quite literally. And then after that, went to school, went to undergrad, went to grad school. So I paint all that picture to kind of just show that I never really had my own downtime. I never really, and looking back, I can say this now, it was really, by choice. It was my choice to kind of take on these roles and these responsibilities because of a reason that I thought that I had to do. I was always doing for somebody else, and it served me. It did, and I don't regret any of it, but I was always doing for others. I was doing to take care of my family. I was doing to liaise messages and, make sure the home front is safe between my parents and my stepmom and my other family members. And then I was just literally doing what I was told in the military and just carrying out orders. And then, also giving orders myself as I began to get promoted and work myself up the ranks. And then went to school, and then I'm just a student. And so it's just, I could keep giving details, but it wasn't literally until a couple of years ago, until I turned 35, I finally stopped doing. And I just really got still, and I got quiet, and I got curious, really. And I got questionable about, well, why have I been doing so much for so many other people my entire life? Why haven't I been doing, even in kind of like a partial way, the same way for others, for myself? And I do believe, living a life of service is very, very important. And I've gained so much in doing over the years, but it can get really noisy. It can get really confusing. It can get disheartening. It can just make you kind of unclear as to, well, why? Or what about me? You finally begin to kind of question what about me? And on the surface level, when you're asking that for the first time, it kind of sounds selfish, and you want to just take care of yourself, and you want to just say no to other people, and you want to slow your roll a little bit. And I finally did, and it just cracked open so many things for me in terms of what I valued physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, what I wanted to maintain, what I wanted to push the boundaries of, what I wanted to push the envelope, what I wanted to really, really question in terms of the boundaries and parameters that I had set for my life, and the ones that I had felt kind of set for me, whether by growing up in a religious household, by the military, by society. I mean, even down to the level to where I was that guy that would stand on the side of the street if no cars were coming, and would just wait for the signal to say walk to cross the street, instead of crossing when it said don't cross. So that just kind of paints a picture of just the level of rule following and doing for others that I had kind of set for myself. And I think the pandemic did that for a lot of people. I think being
Absolutely.
quite literally forced to be still, to shut out the outside world, to have nothing but extra time on your hands and yourself, or maybe the person that you live with, for weeks and months on end. I mean, look at what we know to be true with anybody that gets sent into solitary confinement, in prison and punishment. It's the most cruel form, but in some ways it can be the most liberating, because when it's just you and you and time, you and space, all you have is you and yourself, and you and your thoughts, and you and your beliefs. And whether I think we intend to or not, it's only a matter of time. And I believe human nature before things just come up and you want to question them and you want to explore them. And that's exactly what I did. And it's been 2.5 years now of being, that's for damn sure.
All right. So I think it's so important that you mentioned that you addressed the need to really go within yourself and notice, like, I'm doing so much right now, but am I doing it for myself? Am I aligned with everything I want in my life? And to really transition into this beingness. And I
Mm.
think that's important to address. So I'm curious, what was the biggest takeaway you noticed during the past couple of years? Like, what did you maybe shift in your life to be more in alignment with your truth and your existence and the impact you're making?
I think two things come to mind first and foremost. One is that it's okay to question things. It's okay to question the most basic things as we go through our day-to-day lives, like I was sharing earlier of, is it okay for me to cross the street when the sign says no, but there's clearly no one here? Excuse me, to even the highest level of, how do I want to fill my time? What do I want to do with my life? How am I, or am I at all fulfilled in the work that I do? Am I okay with the cadence, the frequency of communication with the relationships in my life? Am I okay with what I'm putting out into the world? And also, the second thing is, in becoming more still and going into being versus doing, it made me really hyper aware of how other people in my life were doing or being, but more specifically, how they were kind of doing or being in response to me. And what I mean by that is really, I became very aware of everyone else in my life, particularly like the close relationships in my life, friends, family, peers. I recognized a level of capacity in them and how they were holding space for me because of the level of rules and parameters that I had set for myself, and really gave me a level of grace that I was just floored with. And what I mean by that, let me unpack that, is that not everybody is going to have the same approach to life as you are. Not everybody's going to have the same belief system, the same religion, the same outlook, the same way of going about day to day. They're not even going to have the same level of, or they're not going to have the same versions of right and wrong sometimes. And that's okay. And if they're allowing you to be you and to do you how you need to do you, and just kind of meet you where you are, that was a level of capacity that I had never really fully realized or acknowledged in other people. And once I did, I just became overwhelmed with, really love. And I was just so overwhelmed with just like, wow, I never realized actually how different we are in terms of these close relationships in my life. But yet, how could we be so different if we were together all the time and, actually having so much in common? But when I finally got, really out of my own head and out of my own way and kind of got this new objective perspective on my life and the relationships in my life, it showed me this level of capacity in other people that they had for me. And it was incredible. And I then would go to them and I would say, hey, like, when we were doing this or talking about that, and I remember I said this and you said that, I'm kind of looking at it differently now. Did you mean anything different then? Were you quote testing me a little bit? Were you kind of pushing to see, where my comfort levels were with certain things? And they're like, yeah. And I just said, I realize that now. Thank you for holding space to just probe my comfort level and not push me into anything and to not make me feel uncomfortable. But also I apologize. I apologize because, again, looking back, I would see where my doing was putting hard lines in the sand with a lot of relationships in my life, and it was putting parameters on where other people probably felt comfortable or uncomfortable coming to me with certain topics or questions, or maybe even realizations on their own. And it wasn't out of fear. It was just really out of respect for the level of doing that I had put in my life. And they were clearly just much more comfortable in those parameters and in exploration than I was at the time. And so the level of capacity that I realized in people that mattered to me was just overwhelming. And, it's like, it takes me back to my kind of early days of being a health coach. And I would get these questions all the time when I would be working with a client and they would have this change. They would realize like, oh, wow, like I'm feeling so much better now that I'm becoming more aware of what I'm eating, what I'm doing. But my partner, my spouse, my friend, my coworker, my family, they're not doing any of this stuff. And I'm kind of getting some pushback, and I'm kind of even feeling like ostracized. I feel sometimes I'm getting made fun of, so how do I get them on board? And it's now I just got to take a dose of my own medicine. And what I would say to them is, you just have to hold space. You have to just keep doing what you're doing because it's serving you, and hold space for them at your table so that if and when they choose to do even just one thing to better their life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and then they have that mindset shift, that their switch flips, they're going to come to you, and they're going to realize these things, and they're going to want to get closer to you. They're going to want to share with you, maybe even apologize to you for the space that they had unnecessarily created between you two before. And the same thing applied to me, and the same thing applies to anyone, I think, who is getting into a place of being and realizing these things more internally, doing more of the internal work. You really realize things differently when looking at your relationships.
Oh, I think it's so key to pull out that because you're in the personal development space as well. And when you kind of dive in the deep end of personal development, you definitely create this awareness of people that possibly are not really in the water, if you want to say.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I think it's important for people anybody that's listening to this podcast, as in yours, obviously are intrigued by personal development. They're listening, they're pressing play because they seek growth in their life, in either their mindset, their health, their fitness, whatever it may be. And so I think it's important to kind of give them a different perspective of, if you're in this space and you care to grow yourself, like cheering you on, that is what life is about, growth. But I know that it's very common. People will be on a different journey than you, a different pace, that it's not to judge it. It's not to try to force them into it. And I've kind of dealt with this myself, and you kind of get in this like, oh, why would you not want to be your healthiest healthy? Like,
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you want to grow? Why wouldn't you want to have a better mind? Like all these things, and you create this kind of judgment spiral.
Yeah.
But I think it was really valuable that you pointed out, like holding space and keep just doing you. Like, it's all about inspiring another, I think, is like by just being you and seeing how it's changing your life. So I think we talked about this actually when we were recording together as well on your podcast, is being inspired by another. And that will, when you see somebody change, that will instantly spark something in them to be like, I want some of that. What is that you
truly
got? Yeah. So I think that's really great. So talking about personal development, I'm just curious, transitioning, this kind of goes back to your past. So I know where you presently are, which is amazing. And I just commend you for your ever forward movement in bettering yourself. That's what your whole brand is about, I believe, at least part of your message. And that is my passion as well. But going back to military, I'm curious because I believe anybody that comes from a military background, they learn certain attributes that possibly won't be learned as so readily in the everyday life. And so I'm kind of curious, what attributes did you learn there that you've now brought into your business and the things you do currently? Because I imagine there's some strong attributes you acquired during that time.
Yeah. It's funny you use the word attributes. That word now makes me distinctly think of another military man, Rich Diviney.
Yeah, he was on my podcast too.
Yeah. And
that's why I'm using that word, by the way.
Small world. Excellent choice. And what I really like about his work, I think we relate because him and I, he's a retired Navy SEAL commander. I'm technically retired as well, medically retired, Army. We come from different walks of military life, but certain branches or I think certain eras of the military really kind of instilled this version of natural born leaders. And then it kind of shifted into, become the best version of yourself, become a warrior, become a soldier, sailor, Marine, so on and so forth. But his work in that word attributes really rings true, because I think it's a great reminder that we all have these various attributes. We all kind of have these levels to which that they are naturally high, low, medium in us. And it's kind of dependent upon the situation, the task at hand, how, when, and why we are called to do something. And the military will definitely call you to do things kind of at an escalated level. And for me, I mean, I'll go, every Army person listening is going to probably crack up. I go back to this acronym that was really literally drilled in me for years, and it's leadership: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. We love a good acronym in the military.
Yeah.
And, whether it was because that was the acronym of attributes or skill sets or personality traits that the Army at the time had. And so, awareness theory, and it's kind of what I grew up with. But those were really the ones that I latched onto the most and still carry with me today. And I'll even take it a step further, kind of go back, come from a military family. My father was, he was active duty Army. He was 101st Airborne. He was National Guard before that. My uncle was a Marine. My grandfather was in the Army during World War II. Pretty much every male, every generation, we've had somebody that served, all the way, we've traced back to, Civil War even. So these attributes, I think, are probably quite literally in my genetics. I've got epigenetic attributes of loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. And I grew up really, my household, I grew up with integrity the most. And that one rung true the most for me in the military, and is the one that I probably still keep with me the most today. Because I think integrity, when we boil down any other attribute or anything else that we want to do in our life, that's what it comes down to. How much, if we're going to be successful with it, which level, how maybe happy or content we are with ourselves, how much we want to test and push ourselves, no matter what we do or what marker for success we hold or how we pursue our endeavors. If we can look ourselves in the mirror in any part of that process and know without a shadow of a doubt, I'm showing up, I am doing the work, I am fair, I am realistic, I am, any which way you want to kind of describe the situation as as a level playing field, and doing it with good intentions and doing it for the right reasons, whether you're on top of a mountain or starting at the bottom of the mountain. If you show up with integrity and you do all things out of integrity, then I think everything else just kind of falls in place. And that really holds true for me today. If I have an opportunity before me and I want to pursue it, odds are there are a couple different ways to pursue it. There's the hard right or the easy wrong. If I'm feeling low energy, low motivation, if I'm just kind of not wanting to adult or not wanting to work or not wanting to kind of show up as this version maybe that I've created for myself, integrity allows me to have really grace with myself that day, because I know that, it's not a version of myself or a real or fake version of myself. It's me. And there's a very real version of me right now that needs to chill. There's a very real version of me that needs to take the downtime. So integrity allows, I think, kind of this inner monologue to stay, that is very objective and is very fair and is very realistic in terms of what marker for success we hold for ourselves.
I think that's amazing. And I could see that in everything that I've witnessed of you so far, that especially when it comes to your brand, which I want to dig into this a bit, you could tell that what stands behind that is integrity and meaning and
Thank you.
No, it's true. I really recognize that. And that's why I love your intent behind your brand. And so speaking about that, Actually, first, I want to ask you one question before that, because you were talking about giving yourself the freedom and being honest and integrity with what you feel right now and being able to just be. You recently went on a trip, and this made me kind of want to bring this up because I think this is key. I know you're a hard worker. I could see it. I mean, you obviously put a lot of effort into what you do. I mean, we all are, right? But I believe in allowing yourself to take vacation, because for myself, when I recently took vacation, I came back a different person in a way,
Mm.
because I reignited this fire within me. I was adventurous. I was able to just, really relish in what I love,
Yeah. Yeah.
really embody what I value, and just, swim in that space. And I saw you message, or you posted or something saying like you're, manifesting more travel, and it made me think of this, because I think there is such freedom in allowing
Yeah.
yourself to play, and allowing yourself to do what you love and continue to return to that. Like, we have to keep returning home. And whatever that means,
Mm.
whatever you value, is like you need to swim in those values often. And I think when we're in the space of doing all these things, we neglect that. So I'm curious your take on that. What do you feel like after going on travel? What did that ignite in you? What would you say to those listening right now to kind of, you know, maybe encourage them to honor that within themselves?
Work hard, play hard. That's for damn sure. It's a fun, catchy phrase, but oh man, it is so, so true. Want to take one step back, and I'm sure people listening here, and maybe even yourself included, when we're taking care of our bodies, when we're on our wellness journey, when we're on our fitness game, we might have some tools to help measure some things, like a physical activity tracker. I'm using Apple Watch. I got a Whoop, and it kind of plays into everything I was talking about before about rules and what are the parameters. Where's the logic? Where's the reason? Where's the infrastructure? I remember when I would look at my Whoop data about a year and a half ago. Whoop, for those of you that don't know, is a physical activity tracker, measures your strain, your sleep, gives you recovery score, HRV, resting heart rate, a lot of different things. And no matter how hard I was doing all the right things, the quote here, right things of training, of sleep, of regimen, of blah, blah, blah. For some reason, for a while, I was just feeling, here's the qualitative aspect. Here's the biofeedback that's so important, that needs to live and coincide with the quantitative side, all this data we're getting. I was just feeling some kind of way. And long story short, I went into a really severe bout of burnout. Literally at the point where I sat down with my wife, who's a family nurse practitioner. And I was like, I don't know, but I think, like, am I depressed? And she treated me as a patient. She walked through this questionnaire. She was like, if you were a patient of mine, I would bring up a couple of different options to treat you, because we're really looking at depression here, whether that's therapy, whether that's medication. And that really jarred me.
Yeah.
But I was like, well, I'm doing everything right. I'm working hard. I'm producing, I'm training, I'm sleeping. My data says certain things, but my heart, and this is where I really started listening to my heart. My heart was screaming that it needed downtime. It needed to chill. It needed meaningful connections. It needed time with myself. It needed time with my wife. It needed time with friends and family. And so we got away. We took a weekend trip and came back, and I was a brand new man. And then I got curious. I was like, all right, what if I did this like more intentionally, more periodically? So over the next several months, I literally would schedule in beach, fun, friends, nothing. And I would go out, and another unique variable here is that it's pretty much always outdoors. So I was getting plugged back into nature. I was intentionally putting in downtime. So that really helped the rest of my other work, because I saw when I needed to stop and when I would pick up again. And then I would reconnect with family, with friends, with peers, and we would do nothing, but we would spend quality time together, typically outdoors. My oxytocin was going up, serotonin was going up. I was getting more vitamin D, more sunshine, more just general daily movement. I was probably improving my circadian rhythm by getting outdoors more often. I was just detaching and de-stressing, lowering cortisol. So physiologically, biochemically, and emotionally, spiritually, I would then come back to the version of myself that needed to produce, that needed to work, that needed to do. And I was just better than ever. And what did it for me was I would look at my data then, I would look at my HRV and it would always have an increase. My recovery score was always increased. My resting heart rate lowered, my respiratory rate lowered. I would get then for the next several days, better sleep, more deep REM cycles. And then I quite literally would test it. I would test, all right, let me try to have more downtime on this day. And then I would look at the data and boom, everything was great again. And so it was this new positive feedback for me of, oh, doing is good, producing is good, having regiments and protocols and all the health and all the productivity is good, but there really is a point of diminishing return. And my body was at that point of diminishing return, but I was just looking at the wrong metrics for interpreting that. I was looking at all the things that we're supposed to do and all the numbers that are supposed to make sense and that we're supposed to be able to analyze and interpret and manipulate. But I needed to just listen to my heart. And so it was really kind of that time when I detached more from my head, or made more of a synergy between the head and the heart for myself.
Beautiful.
And how I would lean in and how I would listen and how I would be still and how I would take action and how I would measure or look at or even consider at all quantitative and qualitative data, quantitative and qualitative feedback. And that was really it for me.
I think people need to really hear that. And you described it so well, and you walked us through kind of how you were before and how you would perceive things, and then how you made the switch and you kind of question, why am I feeling this way? What, like, I felt the same thing, and it reminded me of the importance of really being able to connect back to your heart, as you talked about. So it's super key. And I think people should really question that, if there's something, because I was in the same spot. I kind of felt, definitely the burnout. I am very aware of when I'm like starting to be burned out, but also that kind of depressed state of just not feeling like something, like a cloud, if you want to say.
It's like I'm doing everything right, air quote here. I'm in the protocols, I'm in the parameters, I'm doing all the right things for whatever the thing is that I'm working on, whether that's your health, your relationship, your job, your finances, whatever. But for some reason, it's not sticking how I thought it would, or how I think that it should, or I'm not getting the results, or maybe I am, but I'm just still feeling detached. I'm still feeling some kind of way. That's a very important reason. That's your intuition. That's your gut. That's the heart. That's the heart trying to just like finally get your attention.
Absolutely. So it's so valuable what you just shared. And so let's move into the most important is your messaging, your brand, and why this is so important for people to really hear you out of what does Ever Forward mean to you? I know this came from your father, inspired by him, that brought this whole brand together, but how do you describe, like, what does Ever Forward mean, and how does that translate into everything you do?
It's perfect kind of timing with this question now with what we've been talking about. And I'll kind of describe it and define it here and now, and then kind of give the backstory. It is being now. It is being still. It is being quiet. It is listening to and leaning into and trusting the heart. Whereas before, Ever Forward was no matter what, go. No matter what, no matter how hard it gets, no matter what obstacle lands in your way, there's a way through it, and you just need to figure it out. And that still has truth and still holds weight with me personally and the brand and messaging, because that really was at its core how and why it started. You mentioned that it came from my father, and it absolutely did. It actually has very, very deep roots in the history of this nation. He picked it up from his first National Guard unit, the having a brain fart, 116th, maybe 112th Infantry Regiment. Somebody will fact check me there. And, every unit you're in the military, at least in the Army, there's a creed, a saying, a motto, a war cry, if you will. And that regiment was Ever Forward. And it actually goes way, way, way back before we were a military in the late 1700s to this militia, this group of militia, this band of brothers, pre-Revolutionary War. And so he picked it up from his time in service and he brought it home quite literally. And he would say it and we would hear it, we would see it. And it's just kind of like how he raised my family and just kind of how he lived his life all the way up into the end of his life when he was diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, a very severe case of it, a terminal illness in late 2003, passed away in 2005. And literally up until his dying breath, he never let anybody know, that he was suffering. Very obviously, physically, he was suffering, but, his attitude, his outlook was always pushing on. And so I used to think that that's what I had to do as well. And it worked for me for a period of time. For about 12 years after his death, I ran from it. I ran from acknowledging that trauma. I ran from working through what happened to me and my family. And it reached a boiling point in my life to where it was quite literally spilling out in the form of PTSD and panic attacks. And just, again, I was doing everything right externally, but I was just dying and melting and falling apart on the inside. And so I ran towards it and I made Ever Forward to me mean you're not going to have that power over me just because my hero, my father, my best friend, all these things, just because that was taken away. I perceived it to be, him being taken away from me. I'm not going to let that determine my life. So I'm going to take this most horrendous thing that happened to me in my life and my family, and I'm going to push through it. And I'm going to make Ever Forward my way of life, my way of living, turn it into Ever Forward Radio. My brother started Ever Forward Apparel. And we kind of just made it this thing through. But even then, it was just like adding another link onto a chain that was still connected to a ball on the other end. And it wasn't until all the things that we were talking about just a couple of years ago when I finally got still and I finally realized that I can live a life ever forward. I can still be moving forward in life. I can have potential and I can climb the ladder and I can reach new levels in wellness and in health and in relationships and in business and all these things without always having to just go, without having to always just be like, you know what, no matter what, burn the boats. We can just push through, we can endure, we can whatever. There's a time and a place for that. Absolutely. But I realized that Ever Forward lives inside of having the most stillness that I can possibly create, because within taking that moment and being as still and being as quiet as possible so that I can really lean in and listen to what my heart is trying to tell me, like infinity lives inside of this one moment. Anything and everything that I want, any potential that I think that I have, or anything that I want to create lives inside of me, making a moment to think about it, to wonder what my life could look like, to wonder what I want to create, to really process how I'm feeling. Am I even fully aware of how I'm feeling? Taking just these small, tiny moments compounded on top of each other, like forever lives inside of these moments, because within those moments, we are creating our future. We are creating what we want our life to look like. We are postulating about the future. We're trying to pull lessons from the past, but also bring it back home here and now to center at home. And that was just a game changer for me. And it gave me so much permission to not have to just constantly be in pursuit and, damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead kind of thing. But again, gave me permission to really just sit and be still and, know that I'm still honoring my mission. I'm still honoring my father. I'm still eventually, whether it's later today, tomorrow, or next year, I will have moved forward. But it has to start somewhere. And I'm choosing for it to start here and now in a space and in a container that is of my design and it is of my choice, so that I have crystal clear understanding of where my head and heart are in this moment. And so that I can adjust the course accordingly.
That's remarkable. What I hear from you is intentional living
Yeah.
ever
Yeah. Yeah.
forward. And I think that's what's so beautiful is now that you've kind of actually through this whole episode, you've kind of unraveled what the meaning of how you are living your life very intentional now and able to create that awareness. Like, how am I feeling right now? What do I need? What do I need to maybe shift in my life to be in better alignment? And how do I continue moving ever forward, but with alignment, attention, with my head
Mm-hmm.
and heart,
Mm-hmm.
aligned and everything. And I think that's a beautiful message. And I think it's a great way to close off is just, you know, for everybody to really get in touch with what feels right for them to move ever forward in their life. I know so many people have different meanings as you ask on your podcast what
Mm.
ever forward means to them. And
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
uniquely everybody's own definition, but really it's what feels right to you is really what matters and nourishing your soul, knowing what you need and be able to fill your cup so you could serve and, you know, over pour that into others. Cause that's all what it's about is, your messaging and your podcast and everything. And you've had so many remarkable guests on your podcast. You're serving, you're trying to bring this message to everybody, the masses. And it's remarkable. I am, like I said, I'm
Thank
so
you.
honored
Thank
to
you.
have been on your podcast. Everybody go check out
Yeah.
Everforward Radio. If you're not subscribed to his podcast, subscribe to his and mine.
Come on over. Come on over.
Yes, absolutely. So I do have a closing question, but first, can you let people know where they could best find you besides your podcast, please?
Yeah. Everforward Radio, like you said, is anywhere and everywhere that you listen to podcasts. And if not there, then I'm hanging out on the gram like everybody else, I guess, these days, just at Chase_Chewning. And I'll say my Instagram is really it's my personal daily vlog, personal daily journal of my personal professional life, really everything that I'm trying, manipulating little variables in my personal and professional self. And then the podcast is the place where I get to sit down with people like yourself that feed into these variables that I'm testing. Every day I'm an experiment. N equals 1 every day for me. And then I love sitting down with people such as yourself and other experts and authorities and thought leaders and just interesting people that are doing so much in these unique areas for our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual self.
Remarkable. Thank you for everything you're doing. So, asking my closing question. So, if you were to share a piece of wisdom that you feel you've learned through your life's journey, a life lesson that you feel anybody needs to hear right now, what would that powerful piece of wisdom be?
A phrase, a quick little sentence that has been so powerful for me. And it's what I've really kind of landed on the last couple of years. And that is, you are exactly where you're supposed to be. That is a reminder for me, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing, it is by design. And I am not anywhere doing anything that does not have meaning or does not contribute to my life in any way, shape, or form. Whether I am killing it at work or I'm stuck in a 4-hour layover or it just seems like the world is falling apart around me, if I can remind myself, if we can remind ourselves to come back to this concept that I am right here, right now, because I am supposed to be, then it's an immediate mindset shift of looking for, and I believe eventually making meaning out of whatever circumstances that we're in. And it's an incredible tool for just enhancing mindfulness and being more present and quite literally looking down at your feet and being where your own 2 feet are. And just know that this is not for nothing. And in that moment, there is meaning, whether you can find it or you can make it, you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Remarkable. I love that. Jesse Itzler used to say the quote, like, be where your 2 feet are. Like right here, right now, you're washing dishes, be where your feet are. This is where you're at. And I love that message. So powerful. And I do think that completely shifts your mindset of creating meaning and intention that everything you're doing does matter per se.
Yeah,
So
truly.
Thank you, Chase. This has been such an honor.
My
So
pleasure,
great
my
sitting
pleasure.
down with you. You are phenomenal. I had so many more questions for you because there's so much to dig into more about you, but this was so valuable. So thank you.
We'll have to
for
do part
everything.
2 sometime.
I know exactly right. Thank you.